Hey, what's up guys? I'm going to show you how to do the data analysis portion of your free fall investigation. Right now on my screen is some data that I recorded for a ball falling from rest. We're going to look at how to determine the experimental acceleration due to gravity, just like your investigation's about. All right. So as you can see on our screen right here, this section of the graph is really good data. All right. Clearly, this lines up with our expectations for an object that's in free fall. So this is the data that we're going to want to use. All right. Now, normally we're used to just looking at the slope. In here, we can look at the velocity versus time graph. We can look at the slope of this line, and that will allow us to determine the experimental acceleration due to gravity. However, what I want us to do is I want us to take all of our trials and put them onto one graph. All right, so it's going to require some extra steps on your end. Now notice I've got my velocity time graph on the screen here, and I also have my velocity time data over on this side. All right, notice that when I select or highlight data on this velocity time graph, it in turn highlights data on my data table. All right, so I want to get back to where I just was. So that's pretty much the segment of data that I'm focusing on here, all right? And notice it highlights it on my data table, which is fantastic. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to drag and select just that data, all right? So I'm going to drag and select just that data. And then I'm going to come over here to an Excel sheet, or you can go to a Google Slide sheet or a Google Sheets. Doesn't really matter. And I'm just going to copy that into this data table here, all right? So now I've got some velocity data for that section. Now let's talk about the time, all right? One thing that we're going to need to do is we need to act like the time started at 0, okay? The reason for this, the reason that I'm going to have you guys do this is simply because in order for all of our data to look good on one graph, we need to act like they all started at the same time, all right? So we're going to ignore these times over here, and we're just going to act like it starts at 0. But what you do need to notice is that each of these times goes up by 0.02 seconds, all right? So when I come over to my spreadsheet, I need to make sure that I start at 0 and then go up by 0.02, so 0.04. Now this can get really tedious for lots of data, so let me show you something really nice about Excel. Even though I've just typed these three in, I can select them and then hit this little box in the corner and drag this down, and it's going to predict the rest of the values that I selected, which is fantastic. All right. Now, one thing I wanted to do is I wanted these values here as well. So I'm going to select these three values, and I'm just going to come over here and add them to my sheet real quick. Take this down 3. I'm going to put those in here. Maybe not. Let's see. Oh, here we just want these 2. There we go. Nope, maybe not. There we go. All right. Now we're all set. Okay. I'll drag this down a little bit more just to get that data set. All right, now we're good to go. I've got time data in seconds here, and then I've got velocity data here. Now what I want to do is I want to copy all of this data over to Desmos. Unfortunately, there's not a way to go directly from the Pasco software into Desmos. It's obnoxious, I know, but you can copy it from a Google Sheet or an Excel sheet. So I'm just going to copy this data here, then I'm going to head over to Desmos. On Desmos, I can literally just paste, and now it's in this nice data table here. Now notice when I zoom in on my graph here, what actually ends up happening now is that my data just starts at 0 and then goes down, and that is what I want. I want my data to look like this. I want to have a trend line for this data. So remember, we're going to type in our function, and I want to reference this data table here. So I'm going to go y1 tilde mx1 plus b, and that's my trend line. All right. There's my experimental value for g, which is pretty good, not crazy good. Hopefully yours is a little bit higher. And then I would do this for each of my trials. All right. So by the time you're done, you should have 8 different data tables and 8 different equations all on this one graph. All right. So you're going to record and then do this process for each of your trials. Alrighty? Sounds good, everybody. Let me know if you have more questions.